أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين فهو خير ناصر ومعين. ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء وخاتم النبيين وسيد الرسل أجمعين أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد
اللهم صل على محمد
صلى الله عليه وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المكرمين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. أما بعد، قال الله تعالى في محكم كتابه الكريم وقوله الحق وهو أصدق الصادقين: أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وقاتلوا في سبيل الله الذين يقاتلونكم ولا تعتدوا إن الله لا يحب المعتدين. صدق الله العلي العظيم. I begin in the name of Allah, the gracious, the most merciful. May the peace and the blessings of the Almighty Allah be with and amongst all the prophets and messengers, including the last and the beloved, Muhammad, and his honorable and dignified and purified progeny. Imam Ilahi, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Pew Research Center, along with Gallup, who had conducted a study in the year 2010 and in the year 2011, revealed some shocking numbers and polls in regards to the religion of Islam in the United States of America. Gallup suggests that 52% of Americans oppose the building of a mosque near Ground Zero. Pew suggests that 29% of Americans would dislike to have Muslims as neighbors. Furthermore, Gallup suggests that 39% of Americans would be afraid if they found a Muslim man boarding the same flight as them. 18% would be nervous if there was a Muslim woman on the same flight as them. 52% believe that Islam is more likely to encourage violence and killing than any other faith. And the numbers go on. And they're extremely saddening. And we as Muslims living in the West face many challenges. Every while we hear and we find of a new individual, a new group that decide to use the religion of Islam, humiliate the religion of Islam and its people for their own fame and popularity. And one of the most recent examples was Pastor Terry Jones, who decided to come from his church, the Dove Outreach Center, and fly to Michigan just to burn the Quran. And this was the most important task that he had. And of course, he got all the media attention. Of course, many people spoke against this. Many non-Muslims spoke against this. However, it also created this controversy where everyone was talking about this issue. And I'll give you an example. Some of you may be in your classrooms taking a college course, and since it's the talk of the town and everybody's talking about it, the professor starts speaking about the issue. And he says, well, yes, there are verses in the Quran that speak of violence, that speak of killing. And therefore, the Quran does preach the message of violence and killing. And there are a couple of children or a couple of teenagers or a couple of adults in that classroom, what have you. And, it could be me, it could be my brother, it could be one of my friends, my cousins, and we're sitting there and we wonder, do we respond to the professor? Do we remain quiet? What do we do? And sometimes we have the courage to respond, so we say, excuse me, professor, or my teacher, whether it's high school or middle school, you're wrong, because the religion of Islam doesn't preach violence. The religion of Islam is based on compassion, it's based on mercy, it's based on tolerance. And the professor says, there are verses within the Quran that speak of killing. And when he says that, if we've read the whole Quran, and we are aware of the verses in the Quran, then we know for a fact that there are verses in the Quran. And we cannot just flat out deny the fact that they exist. And some of us, unfortunately, have not even read the Quran. So we flat out say, no, there is no such verses, they don't exist. So the professor says, what do you mean they don't exist? Here, I'll show you one. And he opens the Quran and you read it, and you say, oh, okay. I don't know. Let me ask you a question. What would be the point of us attending lectures or the majalis and the month of Ramadan for 30 days, a month of the Quran, a month which belongs to the Quran, year in, year out, some of us 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, back to back. We come and we attend such lectures and we leave. Then when our professor or our neighbor or our friend asks us about a verse in the Quran, we won't be able to explain the verse. That means we have failed in our mission of educating and spreading the messages of the Quran. And I believe that every Muslim living in America must understand and have a full awareness in regards to certain topics which are constantly talked about in the United States and in the West in regards to Islam. One of those topics is the topic of jihad, the topic that I'm going to talk about tonight. One of those topics is chapter 9 from the Quran, Surah At-Tawbah, which I spoke of a couple of nights ago. One of those issues is the issue of the rights of women in Islam. And other topics that inshallah we will try to cover in the next upcoming nights. However, it happens that we sometimes are in a classroom and we come across such a debate or come across such an encounter. It happens that sometimes we are, for example, at work. It happens that sometimes we see a magazine and it says, something catchy about Islam, and we open it and we find that there are some offensive things within that article. So we decide that we want to, respond to this article. So we respond and we're trying to have a debate with the author who happens to know more about Islam than we do. So it is once again reaffirmed to us that it is our responsibility as Muslims living in this country to make sure we have a basic understanding and a convincing answer that is actually backed up from our books. Not, something emotional, something that we've made up, our own opinion. No. Something that is valid, something that truly exists, so that we can share with others. And I'll tell you this between parentheses. It's not just our knowledge that's going to be able to answer the people's questions and to clear many of the misconceptions in regards to Islam in America, but it is also our attitude and our behavior. Why would 52% of Americans oppose the building of a mosque near Ground Zero? It could be because they have heard the wrong messages within the media in regards to Islam. And also because of our own shortcomings. Why? Because if there are 5 million Muslims in America, then we have at least 10 million neighbors, 10 million human beings as our neighbors, or more. Now if we showed kindness, compassion, friendship to our neighbors, we would definitely be able to change some of those numbers. We'd be able to give people a complete shift in their paradigms in regards to how they perceive the religion of Islam. And I'll tell you what I mean by a complete shift in paradigms. Sometimes our answers are mediocre and ineffective, so they don't give a complete shift in paradigms to people. Yes, they may change some of their understanding, but not a complete shift in paradigm. What do I mean by a complete shift in paradigms? Imagine you're at a hospital and you have a loved one in the ICU. And there are a bunch of kids running around and playing and being loud. And you wonder, their dad is sitting there and he's not telling them anything. So your first paradigm is that he's an irresponsible father. And those are loud and obnoxious kids. So you wait and you wait for the father to calm them down, but he doesn't. So you finally get up and say, "Excuse me, sir, this is not a place for kids to play. We have, our father, our mother in the ICU, and this is a terrible place for kids to be loud." And the father responds to you by saying, "But their mother just died. Their mother just passed away. And I don't know how to break it to them." What does that do? That gives us a complete shift in paradigms. One moment, we have no sympathy with those kids. And the other moment, within one word, has affected us so much that we actually want to let them play and be loud and do whatever they like. Our answers sometimes are mediocre. They're ineffective. And what we need to realize is that we need to be convincing in our dialogues and how we respond to questions and concerns. And without further delay, I'd like to get into the verse that I began my topic with. The verse is of chapter 2, Surah Al-Baqarah, the cow, verse 190. Number 1, why was this verse revealed? Number 2, what is the message of the verse, and how does the verse draw the boundaries for Muslims and their tactics and laws of war? And number 3, we will examine the sermon of Imam Ali entitled the Sermon of Jihad, which discusses the affairs of Muslims while engaging in battle with others. وَصَلُّوا عَلَى مُحَمَّدٍ وَآلِ مُحَمَّدٍ. I'm already fasting, so it's difficult for me to speak. But maybe with your salawat, I can get some energy and continue the topic. So inshallah, you give us a louder salawat now. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. This is also Jawad al-Nafs, a form of Jawad al-Nafs, to speak without having a glass of water on the side. The glass of water is psychological. You look at it and you don't feel thirsty anymore. So this verse was revealed in the 7th year after the migration of Rasulullah from Mecca to Medina. However, the story of this verse is traced back to the 6th year after the Hijrah of Rasulullah from the holy city of Mecca to Medina. In the 6th year after Rasulullah left Mecca, and you know that Rasulullah was prosecuted in Mecca. The Muslims were persecuted. They lost their homes. They were driven out of their land. Some of them had to migrate to Abyssinia, and they lived miserable lives. Some of the companions would be taken of the Prophet from their homes, and they would take them to a place they had made in the middle of the city of Mecca, close to Masjid al-Haram, where they used to torture people. It was a torture house where they used to torture people in public. And whoever entered Islam, they would take that person or that family to that torture house and torture them in public. And the Muslims would see that, and it would psychologically affect them. Imagine, you see somebody being tortured because they're Muslims, you're thinking, well, soon it's going to be me because I've already become a Muslim too. So they constantly had this battle. And Rasulullah would visit the people who were being tortured, but he didn't have any authority or power. So he went to the parents of Ammar bin Yasir, Sumayyah and Yasir, while they were being beaten, while they were being tortured, while they would put Ammar's father and mother without clothes and put huge rocks on their backs, on their faces, on their bodies, break their bones. And they would tell them this, قُولُوا اللَّاتْ وَالْعُزَّى. Say Allat and Uzza. Say those two words, Lat, Uzza, which meant the name of the idols, of the idol worshippers of Quraysh, which were in the Kaaba. Say the name of the idols, we'll let you go. And the parents of Ammar, they would respond by قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ. Say that Allah is one, Allah is one, Allah is one. Look at the steadfastness. Look at the iman. So Rasulullah would stand and say, Sabran ya ala Yasir, Sabran ya ala Yasir, فَإِنَّ مَوْعِدَكُمُ الْجَنَّةِ. Patience, O the family of Yasir. Patience. Remain strong and steadfast, for soon you will be embraced by the mercy of God. So Muslims were being persecuted in Mecca. Rasulullah left Mecca to Medina. In Medina, he was welcomed by the people of Medina. He established a mosque, and then several other mosques. And then Rasulullah was able to create an army to protect the Muslims. And things settled. In the 6th year, Rasulullah decided that he's going to perform the pilgrimage to Mecca, to the house of God. So he took his companions, 1,200 of his companions, or 1,000 of his companions, and they went to Mecca. Before they reached Mecca, they were intercepted by the pagan Arabs, telling him, Muhammad, you cannot come to Mecca. Why? سَتُفْسِدُ عَلَيْنَا رِجَالَنَا. Because you will corrupt our slaves. Why would Rasulullah corrupt their slaves? Because Rasulullah taught them that a slave and a free man are equal. And the way that they treated their slaves was wrong. And Rasulullah would stand next to a slave, eat with a slave, live with a slave. Slaves were normal human beings while they were amongst the Muslims. So the pagan Arabs said that our slaves are going to see this and they're going to learn. So we don't want them to see this. So you cannot come into Mecca. And Rasulullah, on the contrary of what people have been told, because one of the world's major leaders has stated, I quote, some of you may know him, some of you may not, but you can search this online. I quote, what is it new which Muhammad has brought to the world besides the teaching of spreading his religion by the sword? And this exact statement was stated in Germany, October 2008. So, on the contrary of such statements, Rasulullah decided to engage in a peace treaty with them versus a war, a battle, peace treaty. So they wrote a peace treaty, and maybe other nights I'll talk about this peace treaty and the terms of the peace treaty. But the peace treaty said that the Muslims will return They will not go to Mecca, and they can come back next year. Rasulullah agreed to this peace treaty. He went back to Mecca. The next year, he wants to come back. The pagan Arabs have seen the Muslims while the state of pilgrimage. So they're wearing 2 white garments. They cannot carry swords. They cannot carry weapons. They, in fact, cannot carry anything. They're just wearing 2 white garments, 2 white towels. And until today, Muslims wear the same thing at the pilgrimage. So the pagan Arabs are saying, look, those guys are coming with 2 pieces of towel. And it is the best time to attack Islam and Muslims and the Prophet and kill them and annihilate them. So the news reached the Muslims that, Ya Rasulullah, we're going to get attacked. And what should we do? The Prophet says we wait until God reveals His revelation. So God revealed 2:190. Chapter 2, verse 190. وَقَاتِلُوا, and fight. فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ, for the sake of Allah, those who fight you. And do not transgress, for Allah dislikes the transgressors. This verse was revealed. Now, of course, when Pastor Terry Jones comes and says, look, the Quran says, fight for the sake of God. So God says, go fight and kill people. And people hear this, obviously their first impression is, yeah, it's true, the Quran says kill. But he does not further explain, why was this verse revealed? Who is this verse talking about? Who is it engaging with? This is not in the Quran. And it further is not stated by individuals like Pastor Terry Jones. So it is our responsibility to learn why was each verse revealed and who is it speaking with. So Islam says that jihad is indeed something which is defensive and not offensive. If you are attacked, now you're going with your garments and you're going to go and perform the pilgrimage. If they attacked you, you defend yourself. وَقَاتِلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ, and fight for the sake of Allah. الَّذِينَ يُقَاتِلُونَكُمْ, those who are fighting you. So you do not initiate the battle. You do not initiate the conflict. وَلَا تَعْتَدُوا, and do not transgress, for Allah dislikes the transgressors. Meaning, if they came to fight you, defend yourself, but do not transgress to the point where you're running after them and killing them and their whole ancestry. For Allah dislikes the transgressors. Now, some people might say, but listen, say it. This all that you're saying sounds good. But what about the Muslims? They're killing one another, they're beheading people, they're just involved with all sorts of violence. That has nothing to do with the Quran. The Quran does not teach them that. In fact, it is the teaching of individuals who have hijacked the religion of Islam and have used the religion of Islam in order to spread violence, in order to achieve their own agenda. And I'll tell you one thing. While many people discuss the issue of jihad, meaning holy war, our first and initial response to them should be the following. That jihad indeed does not mean holy war. Jihad means struggle. One form of struggle is to leave my home, my comfort of my home, my family, my friends, my business, and be present in a battlefield to defend myself, because we spoke that the Quran speaks of defensive wars. We defend ourselves. So it is a form of struggle. Another form of jihad or struggle is for those sisters who wear the hijab every morning and they leave their homes. And believe me, some of us undermine this act. They think it's easy, but it's not. Maybe it is easier for people here in Michigan or in this area. But imagine in Nebraska or Texas or even some parts of California. Believe me, it is difficult. It's not easy. people look at those sisters or those ladies differently. And sometimes they struggle. Sometimes, they want to get a job and they're qualified for this job, but they don't make it. They're not given the job because of what they wear, because of the impression of people about them. So it's a struggle. If they're struggling to obey God, that is a form of jihad. Another example is the example of those who are far away from home and they don't have, for example, halal food to eat. So they're in a dilemma. They're sick of eating fish every day or vegetarian food. They want to eat halal meat or chicken, and they're wondering, should I eat? Should I not eat? And if they abstain themselves from that, which is haram, that is a form of struggle. And once it's done for Allah, it's entitled jihad. Earning halal, going to work, being honest at work, earning halal, lawful earning, is a form of jihad, struggle. And that is why I have chosen to speak about the 27th sermon of Nahj al-Balaghah, entitled The Sermon of Jihad, where Imam Ali begins discussing what jihad means and the affairs associated with the notion of jihad. He begins to say, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, وَأَمَّا بَعْدُ فَإِنَّ الْجِهَادَ بَابٌ مِّنْ أَبْوَابِ الْجَنَّةِ فتحه الله لخاصة أوليائه وهو لباس التقوى ودرع الله الحصينة وجنته الوثيقة فمن تركه رغبة عنه ألبسه الله ثوب الذل وشمله البلاء وديث بالصغار والقمامة وضرب على قلبه بالأسداء. Imam Ali says, وَأَمَّا بَعْدُ فَإِنَّ الْجِهَادِ بَابٌ مِّنْ أَبْوَابِ الْجَنَّةِ. Jihad is a door leading to paradise, is one of the doors of paradise. Why? Because obviously those who struggle for the sake of God will enter paradise versus those who never struggled, never controlled themselves, never controlled their temptations. And this is the month where we learn how to control our temptations. This is the month where we control ourselves. We control ourselves against that which is haram and against that which is halal. We control ourselves against our lust. We control our eyes from seeing that which is it is not allowed to see. We control our ears from that which it is not allowed to hear. We control our entire body parts and our existence from unlawful acts. And that is the definition of siyam and fasting. And furthermore, we even control our mind and our hearts. Not to think of the sin, not to desire the sin. Even a small gesture can break our fast. One day the Prophet ﷺ was sitting next to one of his wife, and another wife came. So the Prophet, this wife that had just came in, was short. So the other wife, when this wife left, she went like this. Meaning, she made a gesture that this lady is short. So the Prophet said, why don't you go and bring yourself a plate and eat? So she said, what? But I'm fasting. He said, no, you no longer are fasting. You're not fasting anymore. That's it. You just broke your fast. So we fast with our entire existence. It's not just not eating and not drinking. And that is a form of teaching us self-control, self-restraint. So Imam Ali says, once we do have self-control, once we are able to say no to ourselves, then that becomes a door for us leading to paradise. And Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam says in the Day of Judgment there is one group of people who will enter paradise with the least amount of judgment. Meaning their paperwork is done so quickly and they enter paradise. When they enter paradise, the malaika tell them, the angels tell them, who are you? You just came so quickly. They said, we were the ones who were struggling. Struggling with what? Struggling to obey God and not to disobey God. And that is why we have been granted to enter paradise before those who did not struggle. So أما بعد فإن الجهاد باب من أبواب الجنة. The struggle is a door leading to paradise. فتحه الله لخاصة أوليائه, which Allah has opened for the immaculate of His creation. Because not anybody is willing to go through this struggle. The chosen ones. وَهُوَ لِبَاسُ التَّقْوَى, and indeed, it is the attire of piety. Why would he say attire of piety? Because when I'm thirsty and I'm supposed to fast, and nobody's there to see me, I have two options. One is to go and get some cold water and drink it. Nobody's going to know. And the other option is, I tell myself, I can't do this because God's watching. And when I do that, that is the definition of taqwa, piety, righteousness, knowing that God is always watching. So it stops me. So the struggle is only possible if I am wearing the attire of taqwa, if I'm dressed with piety. وَهُوَ لِبَاسُ التَّقْوَى وَدِرْعُ اللَّهِ الْحَصِيبِ, and a shield, a protection of Allah given to the people. وَجُنَّتُهُ الْوَاقِيَةِ. Then Imam begins to speak about the struggle within the battlefield. And listen to this. This is very important. He says to them, and I have called unto you to defend the Ummah because we are being attacked. Who was attacking them? Other Muslims were attacking them. Imam Ali, when he became the Khalifa, other Muslims attacked him. Inshallah, the nights about Imam Ali will be soon and we can talk about those things. So he says that I have heard that Hassan ibn Hassan al-Bakri has entered Iraq. From Sham he has entered the northern city of Iraq. وَقَدْ قُتِلَ حَسَّانُ بْنُ حَسَّانٍ الْبَكْرِي, in the city of Anbar. The city of Anbar still exists in Iraq. That Hassan ibn Hassan, the governor of Anbar, has been killed. وَقَدْ بَلَغَنِي, and I have been informed. وَقَدْ بَلَغَنِي أَنَّ الرَّجُلَ مِنْهُمْ, that the troops of Muawiyah enter onto thee. الْمَرْأَ الْمُسْلِمَةِ, the Muslim female. وَأُخْرَى الْمُعَاهَدَةِ, and the other who is non-Muslim but under the protection of Islam. The Christian woman, the Jewish woman, that is living in our neighborhood, in our city. وَالْأُخْرَى الْمُعَاهَدَةِ. Then what happens? Imam Ali says, فَيَسْلُبُ مِنْهَا خِدْرَهَا وَقَلَائِدَهَا. And they take away their jewelry from them. They take away their necklaces, their earrings. And what happens? فَتَسْتَغِيثُ بِهِ بِاسْتِرْحَامٍ. She begins to plead and to cry, oh, do not take my gold. Do not rob me. But they don't listen. وَمَا أُرِيقَ لَهُمْ دَمٍ. And nobody stood against them and fought them. And then what does Imam Ali say? والله لو أن امرئا مسلما. Now Imam Ali is defining the real, true Muslims, not the ones that we see today, the barbaric ones, the crazy ones, killing each other and chopping heads off, and those have nothing to do with Islam. Those will be on the fast track to the punishment of God on the Day of Judgment. God has nothing to do with them, Islam has nothing to do with them. Shame on them and to what they have brought to the name of Islam. However, Imam Ali here talks about the true Muslims. فَإِنَّ امْرِئًا فَلَوْ أَنَّ امْرِئًا مُسْلِمًا مات من بعد هذا أسفا لما كان عندي ملوما بل كان عندي جديرا به. Now if a Muslim man dies out of sorrow and sadness because of this news, I would not blame him. What news? The news that Muslim women and non-Muslim women alike were being attacked and robbed. Imam Ali doesn't say, just because they're non-Muslim, let them get robbed. Who cares? Imam Ali says we have to stand with the weak, defend the weak, whether they are Muslim women or non-Muslim women. And if someone does not do so and stand with bravery, then shame on them. And if they were to die out of sorrow that they were not able to defend those women who were Muslim and non-Muslim, then I would not blame him. I wouldn't blame him. And today, unfortunately, when I am asked in school or I am asked at work that why is it that Muslims are killing one another? Why is it that the Quran speaks of violence? Why is it this? Why is it that? We do not have the ability to bring Nahjul Balagha and show it to the people, this immaculate book of Imam Ali, to tell them that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam had a reason why he kept insisting, إِنِّي تَارِكٌ فِيكُمُ الثَّقَلَيْنِ كِتَابَ اللَّهِ وَعِتْرَتِي آل بَيْتِي مَا إِن تَمَسَّكْتُمْ بِهِمَا لَن تَضِلُّوا بَعْدِي أَبَدًا. There is a reason why Allah left us with the Quran and Ahl al-Bayt. Because 1,400 years from that call, Imam Ali still is able to give us the truth behind the statements of the Quran and lead the way for us in a way where 1,400 years later we can proudly say Imam Ali said this 1,400 years ago. He said, let us defend the weak, whether they are Muslim women or non-Muslim women, under the protection of Islam. Then we go back to the general definition of jihad. He returns back to the general definition of jihad, which is the struggle within ourselves, the struggle to perfect ourselves, to purify ourselves. And he says to his people that some of you do not engage in such a struggle. Some of you do not care to perfect yourselves, to practice the self-control and self-restraint. Therefore, I wish I never knew you and you never knew me. He says, Ya ashbah al-rijal wala rijal. Oh, you men that look like men. But a real man is a person that is able to control his desires and himself and control his mind and control his intellect and control his behavior. حلوم الأطفال وعقول ريات الحجال لوددت أني لم أركم ولم أعرفكم معرفة والله جرت ندما وأعقبت سدما قاتلكم الله قد ملأتم قلبي قيحا وشلحتم صدري غيظا. Imam Ali says, I wish I never knew you and you never knew me. It is a relationship that has caused me regret. Allahu Akbar. And let us ask ourselves, with this statement I conclude, let us ask ourselves today, if tomorrow my Imam comes and tells me I wish I never knew you and you never knew me, what would be my answer? I wish that you never attribute yourself to me and to my madhab and to my school of thought, because you did not represent me in the best of ways, because you were not able to take the lessons of the month of Ramadan within your life. What would be our answer? So let us go tonight, ponder inshallah on how it is that we can perfect ourselves from every aspect. And inshallah this can be the beginning of our discussions on topics which are more relevant to Muslims living in this country. Now let us raise our hands to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Indeed, the best time for a supplication, for a dua, is when a person, Rasulullah says, when a person is hungry, when a person is weak, through the obedience of God. So you have become weak now, it's almost iftar time. Due to the obedience of God, we have not had a drink, we have not had food, and we feel weak because we have engaged in the obedience of God. And God says, my servant, my creation, has made himself tired and fatigued because he loves me and because he observed the fast and the siyam due to my order and command to him. So now when he asks me and he prays to me, I will respond to him. Just like he responded to me by fasting, by experiencing this moments of thirst and hunger, that I'm going to gift him in return and say, I will surely respond to your call. So this is the best time of dua, for dua. And the best time for dua is also within the month of Ramadan. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says that the dua in the month of Ramadan is accepted. But he says, فَادْعُوا اللَّهَ بِنِيَّاتٍ خَالِصَةٍ وَقُلُوبٍ طَاهِرَةٍ. Ask Allah with pure intentions. Go to Allah with pure intentions. And I said this at the YMA yesterday, and I will keep on probably saying it here, that when we pray, Allah looks at everyone here. And if He finds that everyone here has pure hearts, cleansed, true, genuine prayers, knowing that Allah and only Allah is able to answer our prayers and give us ease and protect us, knowing that we have no one besides Allah, then every one of us will be looked at with mercy and compassion from God, and our sins will be forgiven, and our dua will be accepted, because this is the month of mercy. So when we do dua, we all raise our hands inshallah together. And when I say the dua, everyone says Ameen, because Rasulullah says that if 40 people say Ameen to a dua, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala answers that dua. So all together, نسألك اللهم وندعوك نسألك اللهم وندعوك باسمك العظيم الأعظم الأعز الأجل الأكرم. 10 times with the loudest of our voices. Ya Allah, 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 Ya Allah. يا غافر الذنب يا قابل التوب. اللهم إنا نقسم عليك بأحب الخلق إليك محمد وعلي وفاطمة والحسن والحسين والتسعة المعصومين من ذرية الحسين. Oh Allah, every man and every woman present in this majlis with a dua, with a haja, give them their hajat. Every man and woman present in this majlis with a sin, forgive our sins. Every man and woman that has passed away from this gathering, shower onto their graves from your mercy and compassion. Oh Allah, give us the honor of understanding the Quran in the month of Ramadan, reciting the Quran in the month of Ramadan. Oh Allah, allow the Quran to be the best of our interceders in the day of judgment. اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات الأحياء منهم والأموات. تابع بيننا وبينهم بالخيرات، إنك مجيب الدعوات، إنك قاضي الحاجات، إنك على كل شيء قدير. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. ربنا اغفر لي ولوالدي وارحمهما كما ربياني صغيرا واجزهما بالإحسان إحسانا وبالسيئات عفوا وغفرانا. اللهم أحينا على ما أحييت به محمدا وآل محمد وأمتنا على ما أمت به محمدا وآل محمد. اللهم أني أسألك من خيرك كله. اللهم إني أسألك خير ما سألك منه عبادك الصالحون وأعوذ بك مما استعاذ بك عبادك المخلصون. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. اللهم عجل ثم عجل لمولانا الفرج واجعلنا من أنصاره وأعوانه. وإلى أرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات. الفاتحة مع الصلوات.